Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast, Forums Edition. You know you're in for a treat when you hear that music, because it's time for another edition. I'm here with the other members of the Wrecking Crew. We're here at the pleasure of Website Amp and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And we're here because we love poker, and we love sharing our love of poker with the rest of the poker world. I am just one of many recreational poker players at Rec Poker. If you want to learn about me and the other members of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew, or you can just learn about them right here. Crew, why don't you share a little about yourselves?
I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter.
And I'm John Somsky. I'm also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere.
And I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm Fergie56 on our home game and Pat everywhere else.
And as you can hear, we are playing against each other in the nightly home game here on PokerStars. We're trying to steal each other's chips to get one step closer to that elusive bronze pin. And just like every week, we're going to take a post from the Rec Poker forums, which are completely free with your community account. If you go to rec.poker, all it takes to sign up is an email address and a smile. And if you're listening to this, I bet you've got both. So go post your own hand there for the topic for the group to discuss here on the air. This week, we're looking at one by our own 5x5 Chris Jones. The post is called Let's Talk About Queen Queen. And Chris, let's talk about Queen Queen. What do you want to talk about Queen Queen about today?
I want to talk about Queen Queen in sort of big spots, because I find myself in big spots with Queen Queen a lot. And I feel like I'm maybe... I need help. I need lots of advice. I need help in lots of ways, I'm sure, but I need poker help for sure. So anyway, we're playing in an ACR tournament. It's a big one. It's a Sunday, and it's one of those 5-hour late regs. We're very deep into this, so we're very happy. We've made the money. And we're down to 100 people left, and we've already locked up $400, so yay! But there's 68,000 up top to win this thing, and so we're 30th overall. We're 30th out of 100. We've got a decent 47 big blind stack, and which is good for third at our table. So that's kind of the setting that we're kind of up against. A new player has just arrived in a seat that has, I think this is their second hand at the table. They're directly to our left, and we've never played a hand with them. So they have 38 big blinds. So we have them covered, but they've still got a stack that can do a lot of damage to us. And we are under the gun, and we are holding Queen of Spades, Queen of Hearts, and we open to 2.2 big blinds, which I don't think is very controversial. This new player 3-bets us to 7.5 big blinds, which are fairly decent. You know, it's a healthy bit 3-bet. It's not massive, but it's not small. And it folds back around to us. And this is where I'd like to start the conversation. If you look at any kind of, I've looked at this after the fact, Range Trainer Pro, Floptimal, all these kind of charts will basically tell you this is when you're 40 big blinds effective, this is a 4-bet jam. Just get it in, and you got queens, you got the third best hand in poker. Let's go. Is it that simple? I don't know. Like when I'm 30th out of 100 in a tournament that's got 68,000 up top, and if I go out or I get crippled here, I can't go out, but I could get really crippled. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to maximize my EV. But I worry about the calling range of my opponent when I shove 40 big blinds here. And if it's anything better than like 10s plus, we've got some equity issues, and I'm not trying to doubt the charts. The people who made the charts are smarter than me. But I look at those charts, and these are the kind of spots where I start to doubt them a little. And I'm wondering if there's other ways to play them, or I'm wondering if I'm just thinking too much. So that's where I start.
I think you're thinking too much. I like the jam here myself. I really do, because you're way, way, way far away from the 68,000 right now. You're just like the payout increases are probably really flat at this point. And if we take this person on and get called, most likely they're going to fold. But if we get called, there's only two hands that we're worried about. Like, we're not really worried about ace king.
I am.
Well, it's a great time to take a race here and win the race and have a big, huge chip stack. I think that this is the time in the tournament when this flat payout structure is going on that we have to embrace some variance and try and get a big stack to take to the final table. So I do like the jam.
You said you were afraid of ace king. So if you could have secretly looked at your opponent's cards, saw that they had ace king, wouldn't this be an automatic jam? I mean, you're ahead of ace king. Yeah, you really don't want to call, but that you're putting so much pressure on ace king.
Yeah,
it's going to really hard
ace king I think is going to call. Like I think, I've played enough of these tournaments where and maybe I just, it's just sometimes I don't know, like I guess I've run into, maybe I'm in like like one of those variance dips that's like reinforcing the way that I'm playing. But like I keep getting to this point in a tournament, taking a flip and losing and saying, wow, I just played for 6.5 hours and barely min cashed. And I want to win these things sometime. Like, should I, mean, I hear you embrace the variance, right? But like, I don't know. There's part of me that's like, I keep losing these flips. And then I'm like, well, maybe I should be like, maybe I do think I really, I mean, I'm not trying to brag or like whatever, but I think I have a potential skill advantage over not everyone. There's lots of players who are better than me, but a good portion of like the ACR field, especially post flop. Like I feel like I'm able to hand read better. I'm able to make better decisions. I'm able to make tough folds. I'm able to make big bluffs. And some part of me is wanting to like decrease the variance that I'm facing in these spots, maybe because I keep losing these flips. But maybe the answer is you can't do that. You really just have to just embrace it, and you have to take these thin equity spots, and sometimes the flips are going to go your way, and you're going to have a monster stack, and that's going to serve you really well. And that's how it goes.
Or Kim, do you have something to say?
Only that this would have been tougher for me with jacks, but it's not in my. I think queens is a clear get it in at this stack size.
And the thing, and Kim's talking about, for our listeners at home, Kim's talking about how sort of in the meta game of the tournament, in the big picture in the tournament, this is a point where the payout structures are small, the payout jumps are small. It doesn't make that much of a difference if we go out now or in a few spots. And so this kind of, when she talks about embracing the variance, it's in the kind of the big picture of the tournament. But there is also this other side of it, which is you can embrace variance, but you also just don't want to make negative EV decisions. So I think one thing that Chris is struggling with here a little bit is how accurate can I put a range on my villain here to continue with? And if even though the GTO charts are saying that he should continue at 10s plus and ace king, if we think exploitatively in this case, this player is only going to continue with queens plus and ace king half the time, or jacks plus and never ace king, then it actually really changes the equity, because this is such a small range already. If you chop the bottom off it, and Chris makes this point in the post here too, that if we remove 10-10, our equity is down to 47%. And even with the money that's already in the pot, it's not nearly as attractive a shove. So part of it, and I struggle with this all the time, I feel like I'm in a spot where I should take advantage of what I feel like is my knowledge of the metagame of the tournament. But I also feel like because the other people maybe don't even know that, maybe their ranges aren't quite what they should be in this spot. Do you guys have any advice for how to, I guess what I'm asking is like, how do you range people better? It's a weird question to ask, but how do you have confidence in that?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing for me that is a struggle to add on to that is like I feel like I can suss out what type of player somebody is fairly quickly. I know you need a lot of hands to really make a judgment, but I struggle with these kinds of decisions the most when it's exactly this kind of spot where I've never seen this player before. I don't have any, and then I've got to fall back on what does population do here?
Mm-hmm.
And does population, is population getting it in with nines, or tens here, or ace queen? Like if they are, then this is a fist bump. Get it in. Is population folding tens? Are they sometimes folding jacks? Then it starts to get a little bit iffier, and I mean it's a big shove.
Okay, so let's look at the information you do know. You do know that this is this player's first hand at this table. Okay, so when someone gets that frisky on their first hand, they have as much information about you as you do of them.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, they're in a worse position because they have the entire table that they, in theory, could have no information on. How does that skew their range?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know how it skews population's range. It skews my range to tighter. Like when I show up at a first hand at a table, I like to be able to see a little bit of the table play, if at all possible. I mean, if the cards force me to like be aggressive, but I will, if there's like those borderline hands, I'm gonna skew tight until I have a sense of what kind of table I'm at. But I don't know if that's.
And in a vacuum, looking at this action too, when you open under the gun at 2.2, when they choose 7.5 big blinds, that is a little bigger than they would need to choose there. And they're choosing to 3-bet an under the gun raise that they've never met before. So unknown opponent, 3-betting a tight range, slightly larger sizing than you might think. That's all going to skew my read towards a tighter part of their range. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't have parts of their range that they're going to fold to your queens or that they're going to call improperly when you shove the queens. But it does kind of make me narrow their range a bit towards the tighter side. The other thing that's interesting about this hand is if you told me there was one big blind stack that I could choose never to play in my life, it would be around 40 big blinds. It's such a stupid size when it comes to shoving pre-flop, but it's also a stupid size when it comes to getting it in post-flop. It's like hard to make good bet sizes with a 40 big blind stack. So you're always either over shoving or smaller betting, but then not having a pot size bet on the street that you need it later. So if people want to think a little about sort of how the pot geometry is affected here, having 40 big blinds puts you in a spot where you kind of can't be as nuanced as you can with even 30 or 60 big blinds. It's a tricky spot.
So right now, go ahead, Kim.
No, I was going to say, Chris just talks about this, assuming he's going to get called. And I think you're going to get a lot of folds. I think when people raise this much, they're trying to get you to fold.
Mm-hmm.
In general.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that is a really good result from this spot. But part of me thinks like if I call for the most part on most runouts, I mean, there's times when it's going to get really dicey for me and I'm going to have to make some tough folds with my queens, but I can still get those same hands to fold. And I can be very wary of ace and king, and frankly, some of the other kind, jack and 10, basically Broadway hands that aren't a queen, are not the kinds of flops that I'm really loving. I'm probably not folding to a jack high flop or a 10 high flop, but they're not like, yay, this is exciting. But
that is a lot of flops.
But I think there are. I don't know. I mean, I did end up flatting this. I think in game I knew it was technically a mistake, but I think the spot sort of like I just felt, especially because it was under the gun one who did this, it felt ugly to me. But I think in retrospect I probably should have, but I didn't.
Can I ask if there's a stack size that you would feel good shoving here, even with the ranges that you've described? Is it like 20 big blinds you're getting in for sure, 30 big blinds you're getting in for sure?
30 I'm getting in for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
And then it starts to get into 40. It just feels like, am I just punting too much? Like this, that's like, I don't know. Like,
it depends. It's all the range. It depends on the range.
That's what the math tells you. And I know that's what the solvers tell you, but it just feels like at some point we are narrowing our opponent's range into that where like the bigger your shove is, the more their range should be that calls you the hands that beat you.
Yes.
And I don't know, a 40, I don't know.
Right.
What do you, if somebody does this to you, are you calling with tens?
Possibly because he only had 38 big blinds to start the hand, and he's put in almost 8. So
you'd be calling like a 31 big blind shove if you had tens there.
Possibly. Depends how.
If you weren't, you probably wouldn't 3-bet them. I'd probably just call tens if I wasn't going to call a 4-bet with him at that point.
Let's talk about what the clear 3-bet bluffs that he could have, or a decent player could have here. Right.
I mean, I think they're well, it depends if you consider ace king, but ace king, ace queen, ace jack. I mean, all the
bluffs.
Well, those are bluffs. Those are bluffs right now. Ace jack suited is a bluff.
Ace jack suited, ace 10 suited. I think if you don't consider those bluffs, then I mean, I guess
ace 5. I guess I would consider
maybe
a
little. Maybe we're down, and we've got some like probably. There's probably hands like Jack 10 suited in there. There's probably hands, you might find I block Queen Jack suited, maybe some King Jack suited, things like that. You may find some.
Although again, like they're not going to get too out of line against an under position under the gun raise.
Yeah.
Right. I'd feel a lot better about flatting this hand if you had position for the hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had been 3-bet by the blinds, for instance, I would feel a lot better about flatting this and being able to play it in position. Like it's just so tough to play out of position passively with a big pocket pair like this.
Right.
Right. They can check back the flop and then hit a big card on the turn. Right?
And then we'll talk about that on the flop because I agree. and I go into these kinds of hands with a pretty, like if there is a flop that is, not an ace or a king, I am going to be leading pretty big into my opponent fairly often. It could be a controversial statement.
I do want to ask you about that a little because that's the kind of situation, and maybe I'm going to ask this question, then we'll hear from our friend Jonathan Little, and we can pick this up on the other side. But Chris, isn't that a situation that when you have pocket queens and it's a jack high flop, isn't that a situation where you've let ace king see the flop and decide if they make it or not when they then decide to put extra chips in a way that if you'd done it pre-flop, they wouldn't be able to get off the hook there when they don't hit. I know there's a good answer for that, but let's let our friends at home think about that while we listen to Jonathan for 30 seconds.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a pre-flop raise or 3-bet instead?
Like with ace king.
What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace king when you miss the flop?
It's complicated.
Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
That's Jonathan Little, folks. Go to PokerCoaching.com/recpoker. And if you don't think it's good value for your money, you can email Jonathan Little and he will give you your money back. He promised me he would. So if he doesn't, you tell me and we'll have words. So Chris, we're in this spot, and the one question I had that I think recreational players like us struggle with a lot is if we're trying to get ace king involved here when we have queens, we really want that to happen pre-flop, because if ace king is going to get involved post-flop, it's going to be with an ace or a king, and they're not going to get involved when there isn't an ace or a king.
I disagree with that.
Okay, thank you. Explain that a little bit.
I think people, especially if they 3-bet with ace king, and argue with me if you disagree, but I think people have a tough time folding, especially to just 1-bet. But it's very easy to check through hands where you don't hit your ace or your king. So when you're out of position in a 3-bet pot and you have a strong holding like queens, this is one of the spots where I really like a lead, because it's not as if you've just had a passive action from the big blind where you've just called, and you've opened and called a 3-bet, and I like putting some pressure on ace king, because I think ace king I find that ace king calls that kind of, even if they don't hit, if it's especially if it's like 8-5-3, right? Then they're just like, well, my ace king might still be good, and I could still hit an ace or a king, and there's all these kinds of things that. And I was the 3-better. I can't just fold this to 1-bet, and I feel like you can get value out of ace king here. Do you disagree?
I guess this really I guess it's pool dependent, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's like what level are the players on that we're trying to get this action from? And I guess the other thing I'd be thinking about is how does the entire range respond to our choices pre-flop and on the flop? Mm-hmm. And if we're going to get aces and kings, pocket aces and pocket kings are essentially going to play the same way, because you're going to get it all in on the jack high flop, no matter what, pre-flop or on the flop. So I always, well, the way I think about it, I've thought about how do you get ace king in when they don't have a pair? But I think, I think as the players that are going to get more involved later, when they don't pair up, it's actually, you're kind of free rolling yourself a little bit there, I guess, in that against that group is what you're saying. So I like that idea. I hadn't thought about that, because then you have to have the discipline to play better poker post flop now, which isn't really my strong suit. So I like to get really easy decisions on the pre-flop or on the flop, like these kind of decisions. These kind of decisions, the ones that I like. But that's a very sophisticated take, Chris. So that's interesting.
Well, like part of this, I think, we started this episode. Kim said I was overthinking it, and I think she's right. Like I do think I've had like, how like you can look in your poker tracker and you can see like your. Like I just have, and I'm not trying to be like bad beat stories, whatever, but you can see like your BBs and your expected BBs.
Yeah, your green line and your yellow line, right?
Mine has a really big divergence right now. Like I am just not winning the flips like right now. Like that is just not happening for me. And so like, I think there is part of me that's like trying to avoid them. And that is not necessarily the right strategy, but
you'll never win them if you keep avoiding them.
Yeah, right. Well, that's true.
That's true.
That is true. But I think I'm fine. I have been thinking about what are the kinds of spots where we can avoid flips and maybe try to play post flop because we can maybe have an edge on our opponent. And this was one where I initially thought that might be, but I think that this hand is too strong and we get ourselves too much in trouble out of position. And I think you're probably right that we need to end up just shoving it for 40.
When you decide to play this passively with just the call pre-flop, I personally don't think it's a good lead on the flop. I would be looking to check raise this and try and get the chips in. And then if it goes check, we can now lead the turn if it's a favorable card for us. So I think that just donking at this, like you're going to get called by almost anything that the villain has here.
Right. But that's okay with me, actually.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Like that.
But I mean, honestly, this way, if you're going to play it passively and a bad card hits the turn, now you can just fold
Right.
if they bet, right? Check fold. And you've saved yourself a big bet there. So just the decision to play it passively versus not so passively, I think. And if you're going to, or I prefer the check raise on the flop.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I was going to check it, I would definitely check raise it. But yeah, so no, I mean that's fair as well.
So the flop, just for our listeners' homes, the flop comes at 2 of spades, 3 clubs, 5 of spades, and what we're talking about is the flop action here. And we got a couple great comments in the forum. I always encourage our listeners, go check out these forum posts. You can see all the details, and people write out these detailed responses and add notes in here. Sir Gasleak, who's been typing in the forums a bit lately, is great to see them sharing their knowledge and questions with the world. Sir Gasleak mentions, I think population calls off ace king for sure. This is facing the hypothetical 4-bet. But tens is definitely questionable. Absent a read, I like your play of just flatting here. Flop, I prefer to check, however. He has the initiative with his pre-flop 3-bet, and the flop misses your range. So I would expect him to c-bet very often here. Then I probably just check shove. We also get a comment from Binkley, who's a member of our Wrecking Crew as well. You can go to rec.poker/Binkley to find out more about Eric Gin and the Peel event that he runs every Thursday night here at Rec Poker for premium members. And he has just a great response here. When considering how to adjust our response to a 3-bet, we need to judge 1. Is villain 3-betting wider or tighter than the assumed range? 2. Is villain calling wider or tighter facing a 4-bet? Which is sort of what we were talking about earlier. Like, can we actually predict their ranges effectively and maybe make this just a math decision? Without a specific villain read, we're going with population reads here. And you need a pretty strong read to deviate from equilibrium. So we should be jamming jacks plus. And if we're dropping jacks to tighten up, then removing queens is too extreme. So he would 4-bet and thinks that they would call at a high frequency. So do you want to talk about the flop a little more, Chris? Or do we get
I think it's a specific flop that, I hear you not leading it, but I think it's going to be, I mean, I can't imagine maybe villain's going to bet aces. But I think that otherwise this is going to check through so much. And I don't think we want that. It's a very draw heavy board. If they have an ace, now they've got, if they got ace king, now they've got 2 overs. Maybe they have a spade. So they're beating our spade and they can hit a 4 now. So there's enough here that I think I want to charge some of those hands, but I hear you, but this is exactly the kind of flop that's going to check through a ton.
That would be the deciding factor for me. If I thought this player was going to c-bet here at with a high frequency, I think I agree with Sir Gasleak that I'd like to put this in a check raise. But if they're going to check behind a lot, and these are stats that you can have on your HUD, on the Read Max HUD, you can check all this stuff out in real time. Then I do like your lead. I think that's a good take.
So we do lead and we get called. And unfortunately,
have we said what the flop was?
Yeah, it's 2 of spades, 3 of clubs, 5 of spades. And we have the queen of spades, which is fairly relevant because the turn is the king of spades.
Right.
Which is a dirty card.
Sure is.
But I'm not very worried about flushes because I think the only other hands that probably are either raising that flop after my lead, or if we check and then either way, I think that's a kind of like a flush draw is probably getting fairly aggressive right here.
A flush draw would have meant that they chose to 3-bet you with a suited hand, and if that is the case, they are going to see that they're going to play that flop draw aggressively. They didn't 3-bet you with the suited hand to not play it aggressively.
It is ace jack suited, ace 10 suited, jack 10 suited are maybe the only hands possible that are left.
Yeah, the king and the queen are blocked by the cards we know about.
And if they have some of those wheel ones too, they're all blocked. So, even like the ace 5, and I mean, I guess they could specifically have ace 4 suited,
Ace 4
of spades, and already made a straight, I guess. That seems pretty thin though.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm not that worried about a flush. But ace king does loom pretty large here. So once this happens, are you continuing on this turn? I know a lot of us would never be in this spot because we would have just jammed. So why are we even talking about it? But if you reach this spot, what are you doing on this turn?
And at this point, the pot is 17 and a half big blinds, and we're 31 big blinds effective. That's on the flop. That's on the flop.
We're 19 effective, and the pot is 41. So the villain only has a half pot bet.
That's the real key here, I think. So as played, they've put in a good portion of their stack already, and now the question is, do we want them to put the half pot bet in? So Chris, do you want them to put the half pot bet in here? Like, is this a value bet or a bluff? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you were to lead here, would you want them to call or not?
I mean, I think that villains should be folding most of the hands that we beat if we bet.
Mm-hmm.
The only, I mean, maybe they're going to hold on with, like, if they can have ace of spades with a queen, or ace of spades with a jack. I know we block the queens, but if they can have that kind of holding, they might hang on.
I'm assuming if you bet, you're going to go all in here.
Yeah.
Right. So what hands that beat us are we making fold?
I don't think there's really any hand that beats us that we're mostly. So if we're betting here, I don't probably think we should, but if we're betting targeting some kind of value, like maybe jacks with the jack of spades,
right.
Maybe ace of spades jack, ace of spades queen.
Pretty small number of combos compared to the rest of the range, right?
Right.
That does skew me towards a check.
Yeah, me too. I like the check. See if we can get a free card too.
Yep. And then if we get jammed on,
then it's a player dependent answer at that point, I think.
If we get jammed on, I think we have to call.
Yeah.
With the queen of spades in our hand.
Yep.
And I think we can fold without it, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the queen of spades makes this we check, and then I think we have to call because we're only in, like, jail right here if they already have the nut flush, or if they have a hand like
aces with the ace of spades.
With the ace of spades.
Yeah, ace king with the ace of spades.
Ace king with the ace of spades. That's just like the worst case scenario. Yeah.
You got the 2-outer.
Right.
Actually, you might only have a 1-outer. Oh no, we do have the queen of spades.
We have the queen of spades. So
that matters. It doubles our outs.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, it's a very tricky spot. I like that I like these hands where we sort of are ahead and behind, and different parts of the range really do respond very differently. It gives us a lot of interesting discussion points. Anything else that people want to add in here? Well, then I guess I'd like to thank Sir Gasleak and Eric Jin Binkley at rec.poker/Binkley. You can check him out. And of course, I'd like to thank Kim, John, and Chris, Steve Fredland, who can't be here tonight, Website Amp, and our friends at Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and everyone else here in Rec Poker Nation. Good night, everybody.